So this is, or intends to be, Unpacking Our Music Library, a visual exegesis on observation and citational communication within complexly interpretable collection sets. And those collection sets that we're referring to are obviously this set of Apple playlists that represents the 360 degrees of a circle in one aspect, right, of its significative communication system. And this is going to be part 3, a communicative and or choreographic compass, atlas, and calendar for the further past, present, and future discursive correspondence and or exchange of understructions for the dancing ground railroaders. And this will be a third section, which means that it will be the third section of 45s, and hence it will designate the units in that coordinate system from the number 91 to the number 135. Collection sets 91 to 135 of 360 as space-time travel communication coordinates, geometrically and conceptually defined by the degrees of a two-dimensional circle, as Waggle dance, as Mandala, as medicine wheel, as directional, seasonal, life stage compass, and lunar calendar. And I've said, well, let me, before I proceed any further, explain, what we're listening to and why we're listening to it. In the background, and I'll turn it up briefly just so that you can hear it. Now, if this is on Atlantic Records, and I'm not entirely certain that Atlantic Records will allow me to use this particular recording of Ornette Coleman's Free Jazz, a collective improvisation by the Ornette Coleman double quartet, which is interesting in a certain way. But if not, I can always either slow down or speed up this recording and fool the copyright detecting algorithm into believing this is something other than Free Jazz, a collective improvisation by the Ornette Coleman double quartet. But I'll turn that up briefly so that you can more clearly hear it, and then I'll explain, why I selected it, and what the focus on this particular discussion is going to be today. So I've discussed a lot of ways in which the 360 degrees can be utilized. It can be utilized in coordination with a system of maps. And, one could either, I argued, one could either establish a fixed locus, as the center of the compass from which the 360 degrees, would remain stable, or that one can move that compass according, to the needs of a particular segment of time, moment in time, defined by whatever duration is required for that moment to be defined by, a kind of, in constructions of event horizons, there's an idea that we've discussed before, the T number, and Ilo Calvino explores that in the piece T0 from the volume of the same title. But if we think of space and time as an integrated spatiotemporal synchronicity, then we can define these as perhaps ST zeros, and these these space-time zeros and these space-time, designations of proximities to can be seen as metaphoric. Slightly, it's really only a slight metaphor to imagine these as points of a compass that whose circumference, elaborates and determines, right, the span of the duration to the t0 in question, and from wherever one is situated in both space and time. And one of the reasons that I brought the idea of the medicine wheel into the system is simply because medicine wheels represent annual time and seasonal time as a metaphor, and they do it in coordination with the compass of directions. The 4 directions are also seen as a metaphor, right? So each of the 4 directions has a metaphysical, or one could say that the metaphor takes on characteristics of a cosmology that exceed, a kind of, merely like practical, method of organizing the world, and are seen in terms of the relationship between one's lived experience and the macrocosmic, right, patterns of universe, and that, of course, is something that allows a lot of potentiality in the construction of meaning and messaging in various ways. And I haven't, specifically talked yet about the ways that this system, can be used to refer variously to elements in time, and synchro locrinons. I don't know what we would want to call them, but these synchronicities that coordinate moments in both space and time. And I thought about the 360 degrees of the circle, and how it's almost an exact fit for the days of the year, the 365 days that we designate as a year, and in our post Julian calendar, and I recognized that there were some possibilities in working with time specifications in the proximity of the 360 and the 365, or in leap years 366. But it seemed to me that there were a number of ways that, and two come to mind immediately, that this circle could be organized, and so I want to begin with the idea of a fixed time calendar, that begins with a particular date, like the way, for example, that the Roman calendar begins with the idea of Janus, right, facing in one direction and the other, facing backwards and facing forwards, and hence January, this two-faced figure that looks forward and back, and and that idea of looking forward and back, being situated in the end and the beginning, also, is significant for our representation of time as dually, proceeding linearly and cyclically, right? The annualization of the year is always a conception of time as circle. So it occurred to me that we could begin somewhere, but I thought that we would begin rather somewhere in this fixed calendar, somewhere that is perhaps more relevant to the universe and to the way that our planet and its systems move in the universe than the somewhat arbitrary date, January 1st. And so it occurred to me that a better beginning and ending point, and you'll recall that our beginning and ending point would be the Zakir Hussain space-time travel communication point, which is both the 360th position in the series of in quotation marks, simple music sets, and that represents the preceding number to the first unit. The first unit, represented by the Roman numeral 1, is preceded by this concept of 0, and in the complex playlist set, Zakir Hussain is represented in that position as the 40th place value. So the 40th place value also represents this 0 place value that is identical with the 360th place value. And for that reason, that I'm considering the marker Zakir Hussain at the 360th place in the collective sets of 1 through 360 space-time travel communication coordinates, geometrically and conceptually defined by the degrees of a two-dimensional circle as Waggle dance, as Mandala, as medicine wheel, as directional, seasonal, life stage, compass, and lunar calendar, as being more adequately represented by that playlist within the first 40 complex sets that is represented by the number 40, and hence when we encounter that number 360, I won't refer to that marker 360 in the collective 1 through 360 set, but I'll refer to that marker in as the last position in the 1 through 40 set, right? Okay, so that having been clarified, it occurred to me that a better place to begin, and we would begin with that value, Zakir Hussain, as the 0 and 360 degree point, that could be represented as the date December 21st of any year. Not in any, we wouldn't have to begin or end in any particular point, but so that 40th playset and the first 40 that represents 0 in the next 360, and also is represented by the 360th marker in that set, would be designated within this fixed calendar system as December 21st. And that, in a sense, would be, paradoxically, sort of, both the first and last day of the year, but probably December 22nd would actually have to be the first day of the year if we designate December 21st the last day of the year. And that's why we're listening to this album by Ornette Coleman. And I regret that I don't have a good collection of Ornette Coleman anymore. Those familiar with these discussions will recall that my collections of a lot of different things, books, records, music, vinyl, have been lost over time, for various economic and and social reasons. But I used to have a wonderful collection of Ornette Coleman, including some of the late stuff that he did with Harmolodics and the Primetime Band, but the early stuff as well. I regret losing all of that. But this album, Free Jazz, it was released in September of 1961, but the significance is that it was recorded on December 21st, 1960, and for that reason, it fits thematically with what I want to do today. And ideally, I suppose, if all of these systems coordinated well, right, and we didn't have to worry about disparities between communication systems. In other words, alphabetization doesn't necessarily fit very well. And I'll turn down free jazz a bit as I proceed on. But alphabetization doesn't necessarily fit entirely as a synchronicity with our 360 degrees, right? But ideally, this piece, right, would be at our 0 and 360 degree marker, and it would represent this. It would represent this synchronon, December 21st, 1960. But the synchronons, and as far as they relate to dates in the calendar year, will have to embody, in some ways, what one could refer to as an arbitrary relationship between the signifier and the signified, right? What the French, what the I always do that. I want to make Fernand de Saussure French rather than Swiss. I think I do the same thing with Piaget, and I've said this before. It's not that I have anything against the Swiss. I just don't always think of these two philosophers. Let me conclude them in the broad abstract category of philosophers as belonging, to the territory of this, very, very small nation. And as Fernand de Saussure likes to point out, and it's the basic principle, right, underlying the way that he's used in various discourses, and the way that he enters into a kind of praxis of the application of semiotics is as foreknoting that the relationship between the signifier and the signified is arbitrary. That is, I can say that this bird is called a sparrow, but it'll be referred to as another set of phonic features in another language, Chinese, Tibetan, whatever language one is referring to, and that there's no fixed relation. Now that seems pretty obvious to us, and but I guess it may not have been so obvious when he was doing his work. Now, of course, there are homophonic representations, right, of certain kinds of speech. We refer to automatopoeia, and those examples, or what Jacobson refers to as being a kind of cross-cultural significative feature in physical gestures representing affirmation and negation, and Aaron is particularly fond of repeating these gestures of motions in the signification of motor signs for yes and no. And you could find in those applications and those investigations of if not universal, common features among coordinations between signifiers and signifieds that seem to exceed the definition of arbitrary and approach patterns of commonality as a kind of discussion, engaging saussure. But in this case, since we're not attempting to coordinate these synchronons, such as we're listening to right now, the recording date of Free Jazz, 1960, December 21st, with our circle, we're going to imagine it in a kind of Saussurean way as being arbitrary, but we can still build, right? We can still build a calendar. And so with that in mind, we can imagine that the 0 and the 360-degree position is going to represent December 21st, at least in the first designation, right? Is going to designate December 21st, the date of the winter solstice. Now, this gives rise to a problem, because we have an extra 5 days that we have to account for. And these will be interesting days. These will be days like the Ides of March, or they'll be days of significance and ambiguation. And so imagine this when we return full circle to the positionality, the position of Zakir Hussain, that this position will have to represent both December 21st and December 16th, because we will not have arrived at the full circle of the 365 days of the year, which means that positions 1 through 5, and if I look at those and see what they are, I can actually name them. So positions 1 through 5. Position 1 is 4 non-blondes. And position 2 is Arif Jaman. And position 3 is Abdullah Ahmed and Sheikh Saleh. And position 4 is Acid Mother's Temple, and position 5 is Adele. And these positions will have to represent both 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 in the 360-degree compass of the circle, and let's see, and 356, 7, 8. Let's see, is that right? Let's see. So subtract 5 from 360, and you have 355. So 4 non-blondes, if that's 350. So 355 would be designated as a 0 here, I think, in this system, and then so this would be 4 non-blondes would be 356. Arif Jaman would be 357. Abdullah Ahmed would be 358. Acid Mother's Temple, 359. Is that correct? And then Adele, yes, I believe would be Adele 21 would be 60. So Adele, 21 will also ambiguate, right, with Zakir Hussain in that period that we can designate with some kind of nominalization. It doesn't really matter what nominalization is, but this will be a 5-day period in which dates can be referred to that will either that will either represent the 5 days before, or we can say and or after the central point of the compass, which is the time compass, which is December 21st, right? So these days of ambiguity, or we could refer to them as double days, will be represented by the first 5 days following December 21st. So therefore, December 22nd, December 23rd, December 24th, December 25th, and December 26th will represent days of ambiguation, or days or days of synchronic duplicity, right? Or duquility, if we refer to the Eric Dolphy title. And whatever designation we give them, those 5 days, will represent dual potentialities in the fixed calendar system. All right, now that's one way of envisioning the 360-degree circle in terms of a fixed calendar system. And another way of imagining it is to begin with the idea of the 360-degree, the zero. Zakir Hussain is as that point in the compass that we occupy right now. And in a daily calendar system, like, let's make the span of that point of the center a day. So the day that's designated by whatever day that we're on. So, for example, today is Saturday, July 23rd. So that would situate Zakir Hussain at the top as January. As Saturday, July 23rd, 2022. And given that, if Zakir Hussain, today is July 23rd, then the next unit, which would be, number 1, is 4 non-blondes, and 4 non-blondes would be Sunday, July 24th, right? And then we can go down and, through the 360 and do exactly the same thing that we did with our fixed calendar system. All right. So the fixed calendar system and the coordinated, right, now, designation, finding whatever day it is now in whatever time system one exists in as being the point 360, can operate simultaneously within the system, and that can be a matter of selective choice, right, in the way that communications are sent. So if one wanted to refer to any day on the calendar year, one could utilize either one or the other of those systems, utilizing the fixed calendar date from December 21st, or the relative calendar date that revolves, as we revolve through the system. So one is imagining that the system stays fixed, and one can point, to various points as one does, in a clock, and one is imagining that one is moving through the system of 360 degrees. All right, so that would make the days of ambiguation whatever exceeds 360 degrees from the day in which we're in, right? So that would make, if we begin today, right, that would make the days of ambiguation beginning with July 24th, therefore July 24th, July 25th, July 26th, July 27th, and July 28th can both refer to the first 5 calendar days of the year and the last 5 calendar days of the year simultaneously, and therefore the construction of them as days of ambiguity or days of ambiguation, or double days, or days of duplicity, or days of duquility, depending on how one wanted to look at them. Now, I could have imagined this in a different way, and I could have divided the number 365 by the number 360, but that to me seems like very tedious, and probably not worth it, because then we would have to the system of 24 hours would also be on a rotational clock, right? And to do that, unless you are a sophisticated algorithm or a mathematician, requires a lot of work that I think is unnecessary. And I prefer the idea of this overlap of days of duquility. So we'll have the days of duquility, and they can be represented in the fixed calendar from the compass point, December 21st, represented here in the form of Ornette Coleman's Free Jazz on Atlantic, that we may get in trouble for as a copyright violation in the background. And if we do, we'll, as I said, either have to speed up or slow down this talk in order to get away with putting it up on the web. So you'll have to forgive me if I sound either like a chipmunk or some other or whatever speaks very slowly, a cartoon character of less than average intelligence, I suppose. But that gives you an idea of the way that calendar dates can be inscribed within the system. So if you wanted to refer to a calendar date of an event or a dance or an action or a Waggle event or an opening or a closing, one of the ways to refer to calendar dates is to use either the fixed calendar system from December 21st or to use the rotational calendar system that begins with 360 and 0, designated by whatever date that one is located in at that particular moment. And in this case, as I mentioned, that would be July 23rd. But of course, that all changes. That becomes a shifter, right, in the pronomial sense, and the top of the compass is reestablished in terms of whatever date that might be. So that's one way of referring to dates. Okay, so suppose that I want to refer to, I'll just briefly, and then I'll have to conclude because we're running out of time here. The recording of Ornette Coleman's Free Jazz is that I'm listening to here is 36 minutes and 58 seconds, and we're at 34 minutes and 43 seconds, so I don't have much time to do this. But say that one wanted to refer to Marcus Garvey and one was going to refer to Marcus Garvey, via his birth date, and his birth date, of course, is August 17th, and so this is July 23rd, and that represents the point 0. And if one goes to a calendar, all right, 1, 2. I believe my calendar isn't very useful here. 1, 2. 4. Yeah, that seems to be 3 days shy of 4 weeks from now, and so 4 weeks would be 28 days, and 3 days shy of that would be 25. So if one wanted to use the revolving and transforming aspect of the calendar system, one could refer to the number 25 to refer to Marcus Garvey, and I believe, unless I'm counting incorrectly, that belongs to this set, Aretha Franklin, This Christmas. Aretha